Hey Carl, what's up, Amy? Hey everybody. So we'll wait a little bit longer, just like usual. Wait for everybody to get on before we start this class. Thanks for joining. So today we're gonna do some Technique Tuesdays, more like Cinco de Mayo version of some products that you might be using today if you guys have a theme for dinner. The proper way of cutting certain vegetables. This is a request. You're welcome, Amy. But we're going to go over some onions, tomatoes, garlic, a bell pepper, and how I do corn on the cob to take it off the cob. But I'll show some little secrets in the correct way. I'm going to go over with the onion that you see in front of you. Both the correct way or how us chefs and kitchens do it. And then I'm going to show you a way that I was taught the technique of brunoise, which is a very fine cut that is kind of simplified and not so scary for a lot of you people. All right, so let's begin. All right, so here we have a red onion. Red onions, white onions, they're all the same. But what you do is you see, sometimes when you cut them open, the center is not, it's kind of uneven. So what I do here is I cut both ends. Let's see. I think I might need another one. Oh, this is okay. All right, so what I do is I cut both ends off. Some people will do it other ways. This is the way I do it. You cut both ends, and then you cut them in half. You stand them up, and then you cut it in half. Now, this onion's kind of bad. So what we're going to do is, if you ever witness this, where it's kind of bad, probably you could toss it. This one's not too good, but we'll toss this one. It happens. Let me get another one. All right, we'll use a white onion. So I always try to rip off all the husk off of the onion. So I'm gonna use a white onion this time. So same thing, cut both ends. Some people like to leave this root on. Now, this is where the onion grows, the leaves, and but I take that off. Some people leave it on, personal preference. Then you take this and you cut it. So you stand them up, so it's round, you cut the ends off, and then you stand them up and you cut it straight in half. So now you got two pieces. So I'm gonna show you two ways to do this. So there's a technique in school that in fundamentals that you learn is called brunoise. So brunoise, you have small dice, large dice, medium dice, and then brunoise. Brunoise means to be cut very, very small, very, very small. I'm gonna go over the first way to do it, and this is probably like a standard small dice, but this is the technique that a lot of kitchens use, and the theory behind you crying with cutting onions is probably because, one, your knife's not sharp. Most of the time it's your knife isn't sharp and the milk bleeds, and that's why you cry. So what we're going to do is you're going to take this part here and we're going to cut all the way, but not all the way through. Okay, all the way to the end, and you're going to go. Now, depending on how small you want it or how big you want it, depends on how much times you cut it this way. So you go all the way to the top. Be careful. Don't cut all the way through. You need it to. You need the end to keep it together. Okay. Now you're gonna turn your onion this way, and this also depends on how big you want it. So I'm trying to go for like a medium dice to a small dice. Then you cut straight down. Okay. When you get to the end, I kind of grip it this way. Okay. Now you go back to the way you had it before, and then you cut down. Okay. Now the big question is when you get down to this part. I've seen people throw it away. I've seen people use it, and the way I use it is I cut the same way that I did and turn it and just go like this. All right. Okay. Same with this. And that's your small dice for your onion. I do it by halves. Okay. Now, next one. This one I'm going to show you how I learned to do this brunoise small dice. That you guys can do this in a simpler form. So what you're going to do is you're going to take this out, the core, right? And this is something I learned back at the W Hotel. Obviously, one of the chefs said, you know, if your teacher tells you to do it the other way, you do it the other way. But this is the way he figured it out. So now you have a core left over. So with cutting, if you do it, the smaller, it makes it a lot easier. So the way I did the other one is how you're going to take the core and do it. And it's going to be a lot easier to do a very, very fine dice or a brunoise dice. But this is the important part. So you're going to take this and you're cut them into long strips. So totally opposite of what you did last time. Okay? Now you're left with this. So you're going to do the whole thing, but I'm only going to show you this part. Okay? So you're going to take the center, and this is what you're going to do with all of them. And now you're going to cut it like this. So you two ways to cut. You can rock motion. You can do Japanese style where they chop like this. Either or works. And now you have a super fine dice, or known as brunoise. Something simple, something I learned over cooking in different kitchens. But the difference, right? So brunoise, and then you have like a small dice. Small dice, brunoise. So this is something simple. I know all kitchen staff and stuff, we had trouble to getting that perfect brunoise, but this method works. It's worked over years. I do it still today, but definitely a good way to do it. Okay, next. Okay, let me clean this up. Okay. Now, we're gonna work on a tomato. So everybody's, questions about tomatoes, right? This is what I have, is a Roma. You can use 5x6s or regular vine ripened tomatoes. They're all the same technique. You have a stem side and a non-stem side. What I do, a lot of kitchens, if you're a professional kitchen, you're gonna take a paring knife and you're gonna take this core out, or you can have a tomato core for food cost purposes. But you're gonna take that stem side out and you're gonna cut straight down. Okay. Now this is for dicing. The bigger you cut here, the bigger your dice will be. So I'm obviously looking for a very small dice, or also a brunoise as well. Okay. And leaving it stacked. So I'm gonna take it down because the higher it is, the harder it is. Okay. So the same, if you look, the same technique is the same here. So we're gonna cut straight down, right? Okay. And the thinner you go here, the thinner your tomato. And then you're gonna go here. So you're gonna turn it. And then you're gonna cut straight down again. So you follow the same kind of technique for onions and tomatoes. It's kind of the same, okay? So now I'm gonna cut this one, see how fine that one is. So I'm gonna cut this one a little thicker and you guys can see, although I didn't do thicker this way, but I'm gonna go thicker this way. So if you're doing like a salsa, or pico de gallo or something like that, and now you're left with like a small dice. So there you go. So one way to do tomatoes. There's other ways to do, you can concassate a tomato. That's difficult, taking out the seeds, taking off the skins, but we'll go over that next time. But the difference between simplifying to cut the tomato. Thinner you go the first round, the thinner you get. You can still consider do the same thinness, but go thicker the other way. So there you go, cutting tomato 101. Okay, so we'll push that to the side. Okay. 2 different types of tomato. Okay. Now we're gonna go over with the bell pepper. So the bell pepper is kind of the same. It's just shaped like a tomato, but I've seen many people, so I'm gonna go over 2 ways. So the first one is, you go here, and I've seen people cut straight down, right? So we'll leave that one as first. Okay, and then you're left with this membrane. A lot of people take out this membrane. It's a little bitter. So we're gonna take this out, just like that. Okay, then, either way, you can either go start this way. So now same concept. The thinner you cut here, the thinner your dice will be. So we're gonna do the same thing, all the way down, okay? And I flip it over at the end. Then you turn it, and then you cut straight down. So these are dicing. So there you go, small diced bell pepper. Now, the other way, imagine if this was whole. I know that I cut it, but imagine if it was whole. What some of us do at the kitchen, we take this and picture it being whole, right? And I'm gonna go in and cut around, just like this, okay? If your knife skills are okay, by all means, go do it this way, okay? Then you're left with this core. On the top, I take all that off, I throw that part away. And then you're left with the bottom, I cut the membrane off. And now you're left with this. And then I break it down. And I cut, obviously, the membrane out here. And same thing. So you can do the same thing. Now, when you do julienne, maybe like for fajitas or something like that, you would just julienne, means straight down, long pieces. So maybe for fajitas, and that's what you're left with. These are julienne bell peppers. So kind of the same. If you guys might be catching on, dicing is all the same. So they have the same stuff, same direction. Dicing, I would just take the julienne pieces and cut straight down. They have a same method, so you're gonna do the same. Now, the next thing, we're gonna do garlic. Okay, so obviously you have a big bulb, right? The big bulb of garlic. And then you're gonna peel off the bulb. So this is 2 pieces of it. So what I do is I cut the ends. I don't know, I went ahead, but basically I cut the end off, which is right here. And I cut it off, and then I take my knife. And there's many techniques to peeling garlic. I've seen people put it in bowls, shake it up really hard after you cut off the ends, and they come off. But I figured that smashing it after you cut the end off works. Taking off the husk. People's made items of trying to take garlic off where they have like a rubber thing and they roll it. I've seen those. It works fine. But smashing it and cutting at the ends work perfectly fine. And then obviously this one you just go at it for dicing garlic. Obviously the more you go, the smaller dice you get. Depending on what you're doing, if you're stewing, you could leave it like this. If you're doing like a salsa, maybe you want to, cut it thinner. Now, this one, the hidden secret. Let me change my cutting board. Okay. So, now, can you guys all see? All right, so now the corn. Everybody has a different way of doing corn. This is the way I do it. You're gonna need a paper towel or a kitchen towel or some kind. So, how to take the corn off the cob? Obviously, there's a husk. There's these little hairs. I wash mine underwater and I take all the little hairs out and stuff. This is the way I cut the corn off the cob. I take this part off, and then I take it in half. The reason why I do that is to make it easier to cut. Now, the reason why I have a towel underneath, you're gonna see why later. So then you start going, taking it off the cob, just like that. And sometimes you're left with a little piece that you have to cut off. You're gonna do the same thing. Now, if I was to do this without a towel underneath, your corn kernels are gonna go everywhere. And it's the reason why I put a paper towel underneath. And there you go. You could use this for corn chowder. You can use the whole stock to throw in corn chowder to get it more corn flavor if you're ever doing corn chowder. But this would probably be for Cinco de Mayo. You're going to do probably like for corn salsa or maybe anything else aside of corn for today for Cinco de Mayo. But the reason, and also, if you don't have the napkin underneath, like I said, the kernels are going to go everywhere. But now it acts as a vessel that you can take to your pan. So, little secret behind. Everybody has different ways to do it. This is the way I do it. But the towel is very important. If I did it without it, the corns would be everywhere, all over the kitchen. But that's one of the hidden secrets of the kitchen that we do. But other than that, I think that's it. Anybody got any questions or anything? Let's see. All right. Sorry, guys. Yep. Thanks, guys. But yeah, that's Technique Tuesdays. If anybody got any requests, I will put in 2 of the recipes. One from last week for the Calbee recipe, and then also I'm going to put in the recipe for yesterday, which is, don't forget, Marinated Mondays and Technique Tuesdays is our themes. I should have done a Star Wars one. Nick, that was a good point. Thank you. But anyway, if you guys got any requests, like Amy, thank you, Amy. This was Amy's request for cutting and techniques of onions and tomatoes. But anybody got anything else? Any questions? Let me know. Look, at my eyes are crying, you know? Why? Because my knife wasn't sharp. That's why onions make you cry. Sorry, Nick, I didn't have any jalapenos. And the store wasn't open. I went this morning, but the store doesn't open till 8. But anyway, guys, thanks for the class. Look forward next week. I think next week I should have some guests next week. Some chefs of mine, some of my friends might join me next week to help us with some Marinated Mondays and Technique Tuesdays. Yeah, Steve, emotional. I get it. Attached to onions, yeah. But thanks, guys, and I'll see you next week. See ya.